You're listening to Beyond the Measure, episode 12. Listen as I, a young choir director, and my husband, a young composer, interview other music educators in order to gain insight into their own success in the classroom. We have a lot to learn, and we want you to learn with us. No matter your age, ensemble, or experience, this is the ideal podcast for music educators, composers, and students alike. So join us as we go beyond the measure.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Beyond the Measure. Another week is here, and that means another wonderful guest on our show. Kara, how about you introduce this week's guest? We have a very special guest today.
Sure. So today we have Remel Derrick. He is the assistant choir director at Abilene High School, and I know him because I had the pleasure of student teaching there, and I got to just learn and see what am I trying to say? Dang it.
The ins and outs.
The ins and outs.
Well, the pleasure was all ours, Kara. Trust
thank
me.
you.
It really was.
Yes, and Remel is also a composer,
Yes.
which is also why I'm really excited to have him on the show, because we always say in the intro that, this is for music educators, composers, and students alike. But I'll be honest, I feel like we haven't talked enough about the composition side. So those of you that are listening that are into composing music, you composers out there, this will also be a really good episode for you, because Remel has definitely, especially recently, you've really started to get a lot of your music out there and be really successful with that. So we're so happy about that. So we'll definitely get to talk about that a lot.
Well, thank you for having me, guys. It's really good to be here, and I think a lot of both of you, and just happy to finally be able to have a conversation.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Yes.
We've been meeting to get together for a long time.
We
I'm
have.
glad we're finally being able to do this. But
Definitely.
Yeah, we're cool. Well, could you start just by telling us, and you can get as specific as you want or broad, just kind of tell us what made you want to do music, growing up, how you came to become a music teacher and a composer, and yeah, how did all that happen for you?
Okay, well, I'm originally from Dallas, was born and raised there, and went through, all of the music programs there. We had very strong music programs, especially at the elementary level. And so I think I had a great music education at the elementary level. I did not do music in middle school. And so as I think of it, I didn't do really much of anything in middle school. But, and so it wasn't until I got to high school. And so let me just kind of back up a little bit. So my 10th grade year, my family and I, my mother and my sister, we moved to a little town called Cedar Hill, Texas. Shout out to the Longhorns out there. And but a year prior to that, my father had passed away. And so, I was a young kid, heartbroken and sad that my dad was gone, and really trying to kind of make sense of life, so to speak. And so when we moved to this new town and a new school, they put me in choir. And I thought, okay, this is going to be interesting, because I hadn't been in choir since elementary school, but I still love music, and I sang at church. But I really feel like I found my people when I joined that choir, and I was in that non-varsity choir for a semester, and the director, Melissa Logan, was the director. She said, no, this is not where you're supposed to be. And so that next semester I got moved up to varsity and was able to have just a great experience there. We were invited choir for TMEA one year, I think my junior year. And so it was just a really solid music education. So I often say that music saved my life, because I don't know where I would be, if I had not been able to find that music community. Wow. And so I just became enamored with music, and I love the choral music. I would take my folder home every day, and there was just something about people singing together that just reached out and grabbed me, and I knew then that I would be a music educator, and haven't looked back.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
cool. And then where did you go to school?
So after I graduated from Cedar Hill High School, I went to a little small town, Choral, Texas, Southwestern Christian College, and I got an Associate of Arts degree in music, and I left there, and then I came to Abilene and graduated from ACU with a Bachelor of Arts degree in music, and I've been here ever since. So It's just really I guess not too exciting of a tale, but it's my
no.
story.
No, that's huge. I mean, it's crazy how, every single person that does this, they have that moment.
Yeah, there's always that
Yeah,
pivotal
definitely.
point.
Yeah, I kind of like to call it the Genesis moment.
Yeah.
The beginning. We both had those moments, and pretty much everyone that we've talked to on this show so far has had those, and
sure.
and yeah, it all goes back to some specific point. But no,
Yeah,
that's huge.
absolutely.
Cool. So you kind of always grew up. You didn't grow up in Abilene, but you've been here pretty much for how long?
I've been here for I got here in 2003 or 2004. So I've been here a long time, a lot longer than I thought I would be here. I thought I would be
I think that's
back in
normal.
Dallas.
No, we never thought we'd be
But
living
my
here.
wife is from Hamlin.
Okay.
So she's a Pied Piper. And so my mother-in-law still lives here, and my sister-in-law and aunts and uncles, my wife's aunts. And so we're here for the long haul. We're here for a while.
That's
Yeah.
great.
So going for when did you start composing music?
I think I have a philosophy that all children are songwriters, right? Because children, music is usually before they can speak, they're singing, And so I think in that sense, I used to make up songs and hum different kinds of things, but I think my first official foray into music was probably in 1995, and wrote a song with a cousin of mine who I really looked up to, and so we actually wrote the notes out and that kind of thing, and I think that was 1995.
Cool.
Were either of you born
No.
then? Okay, all right.
99.
So that shows my age right there. That definitely tells my age, but it was about 1995, and so that was the first quote unquote real song. I mean, it was choral. It was a sacred piece, a cappella. But I thought, man, this is pretty fun. This is all right. I could see myself doing this.
Yeah. So you didn't necessarily. So for a long time, you could see yourself composing. You've been composing music.
I suppose so. I mean, I've been putting notes together. I mean, if that counts, and notes and rhythms. But yeah, I suppose so. That there was always this sense of writing, and especially I grew up in the Church of Christ tradition, where we sang a cappella in church, and so there's always this improvisational feel. We're adding in harmonies and improvising on the rhythms and those kinds of things. And so I guess that kind of creational spirit was always there for us.
Oh, that's really cool. And the reason I ask is because I know I've heard of teachers that kind of end up becoming composers because they end up writing stuff out of necessity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you ever done anything like that, or has it always just been more of you've just enjoyed doing it and you just happen to?
Yeah, I think I came to the table with that ability or skill or what have you. But I guess I've taught some of my choirs, some of my pieces recently, and so it's been interesting to see how they respond to those, and it certainly lets me know how good of a writer I am. I mean, if they can sing it and they can get through it, it's a joy to see that.
Yeah, for sure.
And to see my pieces kind of taken off as they are.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a good next thing to ask you about. So, you told us about just kind of your upbringing and how you came to do music, but tell us a little bit about your recent successes over the past couple years. I mean, you've gotten a lot of your music out there, and I'm seeing lots of videos of ensembles performing, and it's great.
I tell you what, guys, it's been really crazy, and this really started, believe it or not. There's a little thing that happened about 2 years ago. I don't know if you guys remember this, but we were kind of all at home for a little while. What was that? Anyway, but during the COVID pandemic, I really had time to write, and I had time to finish things that I had started, and so I started just posting stuff and sending things off to publishing companies because I thought, I've got the time, why not? Now, mind you, I had been sending pieces off for about 20 years before that. So that's what I tell people. Any composers, any songwriters out there who really want to make it, you can't give up. Because all I needed was just one yes. Now, I had received quite a few no's, but I just needed that one yes. And my life has just completely taken off from that one yes. I mean,
Wow.
I was able to have 2 pieces published with Walton, and I've gotten lots of notoriety from just being able to be in their catalog. And I've had performances, gosh, all over the country. I mean, South Dakota, North Carolina, Minnesota. I mean, places I've never even been to, which is kind of cool. So I want to encourage anybody who is doing any kind of artistic endeavor, stay with it. Don't give up. Keep pushing. Keep striving, because eventually, if you want it bad enough, I believe that the universe will allow you to have it. And I'm a living witness of that.
Oh, that's so cool. And then that's really inspirational to me, and it's been really inspirational just to be able to see that happening.
Absolutely.
Over the past couple years. And I mean, that's really powerful. It I think I heard, I don't know, what's the saying? It's like it takes many swings to be a one-hit wonder or something like that. Or something like that.
Yeah. That's definitely something I don't want to be. And so you talk about this growth, or this kind of significant growth, I guess you could say, that I've had over the past couple of years. I don't want to be that person that just explodes on the scene and then I just, die a quick death. I mean, I want my progress to be steady and to be measured, and to, I want to be in the business a long time. And so I'm really wanting to take my time and learn the craft. I mean, I don't consider myself to have arrived at all. I don't think I'm the best composer, but I'm always open to learning and listening. And I think that's the best thing that we can do as a composer, is listen. And not only listen to what we're doing, but listen to what other composers are writing. And thinking, what can I learn from them? And Kara knows this. I mean, our students inspire us. As a teacher, I'm constantly inspired by my kids. And so I think my most important job is listening. As a husband, as a father, that's my most important job, is to listen.
Oh, man, that's huge.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. The most important thing we can do is to listen.
Yeah, absolutely. And not just to listen critically, and to listen beyond, just mere sounds and sights and those kinds of things. But, listen to the heart of a thing, the spirit of a thing. Listen to the heart of your children, your wife, whatever the case may be, and really try to see and understand them. And so that's what I try to do. I may not always do the greatest job at it, but I try to do that.
That's so cool. Well, and that's just kind of a good representation of, music itself, and kind of how it represents how we should be as people. That's cool. Well, Kara, button at any point, but I just have all these questions from a composer standpoint.
I mean, I have one, but I feel like I just need it needs to flow.
Oh, okay. Well, no, that's fine. I just didn't want you to think I'm just constantly just keeping you.
It's okay. This is your area.
I'm loving this, guys. This is awesome. This is great.
Well, okay. So I have two. So it's technically one question, but it can be inverted either way, right? So my first question is, what advice do you have to teachers that maybe are kind of dabbling in composing and maybe haven't done much of that in the past, and what can kind of help them, or maybe they're having to write out a necessity and they just kind of start doing that kind of thing. So what is your advice to them? And then my inverse question is, well, what about composers that maybe need more experience in kind of the teaching area?
Wow.
So that how does that influence them? So, and take your time if you need to.
Okay. Well, I think I'll definitely have to do that. Teachers that are kind of dabbling in composing, I mean, they have you have an advantage because you have students who will learn anything you put in front of them. So I think that is the great advantage, is having a choir to write for. Most of the time as composers, we're writing for choirs that we may never hear or never see, or we're writing for an imaginary choir. But I think the advantage that teacher has is, hey, you have students in front of you that will learn what you put in front of them, and you can it's just trial and error. You can put something before them and figure out, okay, this works, this doesn't work. And so I think that is the great advantage that teacher has.
Yeah, that's something that I've definitely have wished that I had more access to on my end, right? I mean, I have written, recently, especially I'm really trying to focus more on writing music that is more accessible for ensembles, and I've been, blessed to know, teachers like you and other people around that can give me good feedback on it. But and as good as that is, and as important as that is, it still doesn't beat literally being there in a room with the thing that can do it.
Yeah, and you think about guys like, Eric Whitaker, for instance, or John Rutter, these famous choral composers. They have these phenomenal choirs that they're able to write for, and that they know what their, abilities are, and they know what colors they're able to produce. And so that's really cool to be able to have that. Maybe one day I'll have that. I think so. The flip side of that question is a composer who's wanting to teach. I think, again, there's an advantage there because the composer is so used to hearing all of these different kinds of sounds and listening that, you ask the kids, hey, what kind of music are you interested in?
Yeah.
What do you like? What sort of texts do you connect with? And start maybe incorporating some of those styles into what you're writing. But I think the kids should have a voice in that. And so I think that composer then can take those can take that feedback and say, okay, I want to craft this piece specifically for these kids. So I think just listening and elements that they like. I mean, even if it's rap. Now, rap has gotten pretty bad name over the course of the years, and hip hop and those kinds of things. But this is what our kids are listening to.
Yeah,
and so our music, and I'm a firm believer that our music, the music that we teach, should reflect the kids that we teach.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and I think a good example of something like that is look at like Hamilton, the musical.
Yeah, definitely.
Obviously, that
absolutely.
I mean, that's a huge genre bridge right there, right? Like it has so much rap elements and hip hop, but also I would assume, and I mean even for me personally, it's it's helped introduce so many people more to the musical theater side,
definitely,
and vice versa,
right?
And then that in turn, I'm sure eventually kind of goes over to choir as well,
right? And it gets them interested in history,
and
so you have those cross-disciplinary things going on. But I would say, just go for it. Both teacher and composer. Just it doesn't hurt to try.
Yeah.
You've got to be comfortable with trying, and then maybe not always being successful, but at least that you tried.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Are you going to regret not trying something more later?
Yeah. And I know a lot of composers have started off, as you said earlier, who have been teachers, and who said, hey, there's a need here. I mean, I can think of several, and I think those composers have probably been a lot more impactful because as a teacher, I'm trying to assess, okay, what do my kids need? Now, we get caught up as teachers with a lot of things, right? We have to have pieces from the PML and that kind of thing. But I always focus on how will my kids connect to what I'm teaching. Now, there are certain things that I want them to learn, right? But at the end of the day, how will they connect to the texts and the music and that? So I always think about that.
So what does you kind of already started to tell us about it, but what does from start to finish, or I'll just say just the writing process, what does, because I also want to hear more about like talking to the publisher and the editors, because I've always been curious about that, and I'm sure there's a lot of other people listening that are curious about how that works specifically. But just as far as writing the music goes from start to finish, you start dabbling with a new idea all the way to alright, hit the double bar line and I've got it pretty fleshed out. What does that look like?
I think for me, text is huge.
Really? Yeah.
I've always loved words. I love poetry. And so the text is always really huge for me. And so I lived with the text for a while. I spend time with it. I memorize the text. And I type it up, and I can take it out and look at it, and I'm making marks on the text, but I really get to know intimately acquainted with the text, because the music then is born out of the text. I just finished a commission for Dr. Jeff Goolsby over at ACU,
Yeah.
and the text that we chose just was wonderful. The text is, "The sky tore itself apart, and the sun burned itself down, just so you could see another day. And now that this galaxy full of bright stars is keeping you alive, how dare you not understand this beautiful unheard love, that you are to live for the loves that you don't know, and yes, you are to live." So that text, that poem, I live with it for, I would say, at least a month, maybe more.
Got it.
So
Cool.
that I could get the sense of the rhythm of the text.
So your process, your writing process begins way before you even write a first note.
It almost always begins with the text. And before that, I mean, before I have an actual text, I'm reading poetry. I have lots of poetry books, and so I'm looking through those, and I'm reading poetry all of the time, and I'm on public domain poetry, and I'm looking for a text that will just, first of all, communicate to me, but then one that will communicate to those that I'm writing for. So text is key for me. And then once I have the text, and I'm pretty sure about, kind of what the rhythm of the text is, then I begin to sort of craft a melody with the text, with that sort of rhythmic, those rhythmic nuances in place. I heard John Rutter once say that it's nobody really wants to hear about, how you put notes on the page. They just want to hear the finished product. But I think there's a sacred thing that happens, I think, once you begin to write something, once you begin to create. There's, I don't know, it's magical, it's mystical, and I don't know that I'll ever get tired of it. It's just, it's fun, certainly, but it is also frustrating. It's like, now, pardon me, ladies, but I use this as kind of an example. It's like birthing a baby. You carry that baby with you for 9 months, and you're trying to eat all the right things, and the baby's kicking you and giving you heartburn and all that kind of thing. But at the end of that 9 months, you have this perfect little tiny human that you've created. And, I feel the same way with my compositions. After I've struggled with it, hopefully I hope something beautiful has come as a result of that. So it's a struggle. It's a struggle, but of course your skill and your the things that you've learned and that come into play. But I don't know if there's a specific process.
Sure.
That's a great question that you mentioned. I don't know that I have a specific way of doing it.
Oh, I understand. I don't know if I could answer that question for myself
that's
either.
Pretty tough question to answer.
I know, and sometimes I get to the end of a piece and I go back and I look at it and I'm like, how did I even do that?
Exactly. How did I get here?
It's like, I don't think I could have written that. But
it definitely takes time, but it's you have an end goal in mind, you have an end result, and you try to keep that ever before you. And I'm just constantly driving toward that end result, that end goal, which is hopefully to craft something beautiful.
Let us take a quick break real quick so I can tell you a little bit about this podcast's primary sponsor, which is Christian Fortner Music. That's right, my own music business. This is the primary platform that I use to sell my music, and you can find it at www.christianfortner, that's Fortner, music.com. Now, you may be thinking, oh, I don't know, this guy is a young composer. Does he really know what he's doing? Well, to be honest, none of us composers really know what we're doing, if we're being completely honest with ourselves. But if you want to kind of get an idea of what my music might be like and if it might be a good fit for your ensemble, you can actually get a free copy of music from me. That's right, a free piece of music. This isn't just a study score. This is full score and parts that you can use for your ensemble to perform completely for free. And you can do that by signing up for my mailing list. So if you go to my website, Christian Fortner, that's Fortner, music.com/mailings, you can sign up for my mailing list right there, and you'll get a link in your inbox where you can select a piece of music for either choir, string orchestra, or band. And I should also mention that the choir piece, it can be either an SAB, SA, or TB version. So for any of you out there that are looking for SAB, SA, TB, specific voicings like that, then this might be a good opportunity for you. So yeah, that's about it. Again, if that's something you'd be interested in, just check it out on my website. And now we can get back to the episode. Okay, and so then now kind of switching to so you finished the piece, and this is something that I've been wanting to talk to you about, just knowing that you have this experience, but this is something I've always wondered about. Like, I feel like for some reason, like I've looked up how this works online, and you kind of get some general descriptions, but I would really just like to hear from your experience, and for anyone else listening that's just not familiar with, how does the publishing process work with going through a publisher, but you also have your own publishing.
I do
so
own my own publishing.
So you can kind of talk about kind of both sides of that coin, but just from, I'm assuming you start by sending it to a publisher, and then kind of what happens from there.
I think one thing that I do, and I was encouraged to do this very early on, is if you know that first of all, most of the time as composers, we select a publisher just based on their notoriety.
Yeah.
Right? We don't select that publisher because we feel like that is the best home for our pieces. It's name recognition, right? But I was encouraged many years ago to study the catalogs of each publishing company that I'm interested in, and see what kinds of music they're publishing. See what kinds of texts they're using. What kinds of accompaniments they're using, and really get a feel for what that publishing company is publishing. I've heard so many publishers say, I've gotten some great pieces from some composers, but I opened up the piece and I realized that they don't even know what kind of music we publish. They're just sending stuff out.
Yeah.
So you've got to know, okay, what kinds of music does this publisher publish, and will my music be a good fit for their catalog? So every year when all of the catalogs come out, I take the time I go through each catalog, and I see, okay, what kinds of text are they using? What kinds of keys? I go through each song and I evaluate it, and I think, okay, am I writing that kind of music? Now, maybe not, but if I want to publish for that publishing company, I need to know what kinds of music that they're publishing.
That's really interesting for me to know. And then again, kind of like with the music itself, it's like the publishing process starts way before you even send a piece to somebody.
Yeah.
And so I'm just going to get really specific here.
Sure.
So when you're doing that, I mean, is that like you said, the catalog comes out and you just have the list, and you just go down the line and listen to each one? And
and
take
most
notes,
publishers make those, perusal score available, and an MP3, and I just sit there and listen, and I hear what they're doing and how they wrote and how they constructed the voices, and I look at the voice leading and all of that. And then I just, I don't try to mimic what they're doing, so to speak, but I do try to write in a similar way or a similar style, so that now I don't do this anymore, but I used to. I used to try to write so that I could get published.
That's what I was going to ask you, if that's been like a battle.
Sure.
Yeah, that's something I've wondered about. Cause again, I right now I just self-publish my music, and I mean I use like My Score and Arrange Me, but
definitely.
And I haven't really yet started or tried that process of submitting to publishers.
Right. Yeah, I think that's something that younger composers get caught up with, is because they want to be published so bad. And I was the same way. I thought, man, how great would it be to see my name on a piece of music? And I think that was probably why I didn't get published, because I was really writing for the wrong reason. Now I write because I enjoy it, and I want to see good music out there. But you've got to write because you are a writer. You've got to write because you enjoy it, and that your life would be incomplete if you didn't write. And that is why I still write. And there have been many moments, Carol, when I've wanted to just give up and throw in the towel and just say, I'm not going to do this anymore because nobody seems to want my music anyway. But that's really not what it's about. It's about you creating art, and just for art's sake. You're creating something just for the sake of putting something beautiful in the world. And if it happens to get published, then that's just kind of the icing on the cake.
Yeah.
But I don't write to get published anymore. Now I've been fortunate enough to be able to have some things published, but I still self-publish a lot of things, and I'm still going to continue to do that. And so I don't think that we should write just to get published.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
we should write because we enjoy writing.
That's great.
Yeah.
So so you haven't even sent the piece yet. You've just studied, the different publishers in the catalog. So what happens once you, and also, is this like, I guess it could go either way. Like maybe you already have a piece you've written, but you haven't yet sent to a publisher, or you're just wanting to write something new.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, every publisher has on their website their submission policy. So we want you to send it to us this way, by mail. Most of them don't do snail mail anymore, but by email, and we want it to follow the all of these criteria. Now, I did that incorrectly many times and badly, but they have it pretty much laid out there. And so, you may want to send an interest email to the publisher and say, hey, listen, would you be interested in publishing this type of music that I'm writing? Or are you looking for, a TBB, piece with, saxophone and tambourine and some other kind of obscure instrument, and maybe they're interested in it, maybe they're not, but that would be good just to kind of get your foot in the door. And if they say yes, we would love to see it, then you can submit something. I think a lot of publishers or a lot of composers make the mistake of sending pieces without really giving a sense of who they are. So a bio is always really important. Send your bio out there, attach your bio, if you've published any pieces anywhere else, if you've, what you've written basically. And so that gives the publishers a sense of kind of who you are. Yeah. So that you're not just saying, all right, here I am, publish my piece. It's not going to go over too well. Yeah.
You've really got to have the identity of everything, not just for the piece, but also for you.
Well, and you got to know how to, and this is tough for me. You've got to know how to market yourself. I'm not good at that. I'm a real laid back guy. I like to be kind of in the background, so to speak, and so having to put myself out there in that way has been a bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
Because you really have to get good at presenting yourself.
Yeah.
Who you are.
Because you can't just sit there and wait for people to come to you.
Yeah, you've got to go to them.
Yeah.
And now many times when you go to them, they're going to be happy to see what you have, but you've got to know how to present yourself and how to market yourself, and that's the skill that I'm still working on.
Yeah, I'll tell you just kind of a personal anecdote.
Sure.
And I still don't know. I'm a really introverted guy, and some people that know me would say, "What? There's no way." But but I am. And like a couple years ago, we had gone to TMEA, and I wanted to go up and talk to a bunch of the different publishing booths that were there. Yeah. And I don't think I ended up talking to anybody because I was too nervous to go up to them. But this past year, I think I've grown a little bit since then, and this admissions counselor job I've been in has actually helped me a lot. And I went up and I talked to every single booth I could find, and it was great. And I met a lot of people, and I felt so good after doing
awesome.
That.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
If there's anyone in a similar scenario, just know that it'll be okay. Just go up to people and don't be afraid to just start talking to people.
Yeah, and they're usually happy to talk to you. They're happy to meet you and to talk with you. And, most publishers, I would dare say all the publishers, but most of them certainly, they're always happy to review music. Now, you may not get a yes every time, but they're happy to look at your music. And, many times out there are diamonds in the rough that they find from composers who they don't know or they've never heard of. But that is how you establish a relationship with the publisher. Yeah, cool. So it's a very cool process.
Very cool. And so once you have a piece that you feel like might fit a publisher, so you send it to them, I'm assuming.
You send it to them. You send a PDF usually. Don't send your finale file because, you just don't want anything
Yeah.
to happen where they could reproduce your piece or
Definitely.
just anything. Send a PDF. Some publishers will want an audio file, whether it's MIDI generated or whether it's an actual file or music, concert file. And so you send that along with the PDF, and you wait for 3 to 6 months.
Oh, man. And that's probably the hardest part right there.
That's the most fun part right there is
Oh,
is the waiting, because
Wow.
in that that time you're just like, wow, okay, are they going to publish it? I haven't heard from them. What's going to happen? But the most satisfying thing is to get, and I've been fortunate enough to get the email that says, hey, we want to publish your stuff. But again, I've gotten a lot of, we're sorry, but your piece is just not a good fit in our catalog.
Yeah.
That's the general
Yeah.
message that's given. But it's really cool when you get that yes.
Oh, I bet. And so when you get that yes, is that it? Is it over? Your piece just gets published automatically?
It's not over. So then the real fun begins. And so your editor, whomever that may be, may start to make some suggestions about, for instance, I published a piece with Walton called "Hold On Just a Little While Longer."
It's a great piece. We've sung it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys did. Thank you for that. And so the editor came to me and she said, I think, because I had originally titled it "Hold On." Well, there's lots of hold ons out there, right? There's the Jester Hairston, there's the Marcus Garrett. I mean, there's so many different versions of "Hold On." She said, I think, what would you think? Now, here's how she put it. She said, what would you think about changing the title from "Hold On" to "Hold On Just a Little While Longer"? And I thought about it. I said, yeah, sure, because that makes it much more distinguishable from the other pieces that are titled "Hold On." So that was the only editing that she did on that piece.
Wow.
So there was nothing else that needed to be done. And so now at that point, they will ask for your finale file so they can start putting things together. And then they start sending you proofs. Okay, how does this look? Do you need to make any changes? Is this the dynamic you want? And so what I normally do is I use a PDF, and they'll send me the PDF, and you can do the little notes in a PDF, and so I'll make notes and I'll send it back, and so she'll send me the proof back and said, is this good? And so it's a back and forth thing where we're trying to make sure that the printed page looks the way that I envisioned it to look.
Yeah.
And so that there are no gross errors or anything like that. So that's kind of a tedious process. Oh, I left a note off here. I want to put that in, or I want to change the piano accompaniment up here. So that's kind of it's kind of a tedious process. But you eventually get to the point where you're both happy with it, and then they send it off to their printers to print it.
Cool. And so you said, like, with "Hold On Just a Little While Longer," that one was a pretty quick editing process.
Very
right?
quick. Yeah.
But how have there been any that have been maybe like longer or?
Yeah. So this piece that I'm going to be, it's out already. It's called Mixolydian Gloria for you music theory nerds. And I have to tell you guys a story about how that title came to be. But it's Mixolydian Gloria. And so I originally had the piece written in F major. So the editor, whom I've just really grown to love and appreciate, Denise Eaton, who is just a legend in the state of Texas and a legend choral director and clinician. And gosh, I just don't have enough great things to say about her. But, she had accepted the piece and she thought, okay, let's try a different key. I think maybe we might need a lower key. So she said, listen, let's maybe do E flat major. And so I went back to my finale file and I transposed it to E flat major. And she said, yeah, I think that'll work. And then she said, hey, what do you think about maybe this being an optional a cappella? And that was so far from what I had ever envisioned the piece to be. But she said, I've spent a little bit of time with it this morning, and I think that it could work as an optional a cappella. And so she said, you'll have to go back here and rework this little spot and, this and this. And so I said, yeah, okay, well, I think I can do that. I think, and just as an aside, I think composers make a mistake when you're not willing to make any changes.
Yeah.
Because you think that what you have is great, and it probably is, but is it the greatest for the people that will learn your piece,
Yeah.
the students, the performers?
Mm-hmm.
And so I have learned to just trust that process, and very happy with the results. I mean, Miss Eden was right on the money.
Yeah.
She was right
That's
on
so
the
cool.
money.
And
Yeah.
so when you say in what's the term? Is it editor
Yeah.
or editor?
Editor, yeah.
I think it's easy to hear the term editor, and it's like, oh, they're just chopping things out.
They got
or
their
saying
red
it's a-
pen out.
Yeah, but it's like no,
Yeah.
they're really an advisor,
Absolutely.
right? And like a mentor in many ways.
It's absolutely a mentorship, and that's how you have to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's just, or they're making the music better. They're making it better based on their expertise,
Mm-hmm.
and they know what's going to sell. Let's not just gloss over that. They know the market.
Yep.
So you've got to trust them with that.
It takes a lot of humility.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Cool. Was there anything you were gonna
Well,
say?
I actually had a question about Mixolydian and Gloria.
Yeah, sure.
So it segued kind of. That was my question.
Okay.
Because whenever I was student teaching with you, you were teaching your was it the non-varsity boys? I think it was for.
Yeah,
it
was. It was
You
Eagle
had
Choral
them sing that for
for
UIL,
contests.
yeah.
Yeah, sure did. Yeah.
Let me see. What did I say? Did you like write it for them? I can't remember.
So I really did. I mean, I wrote it during the pandemic, and I thought, well, we're going to be severely hampered because we haven't had time to sing together.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, let me just kind of put something together that'll be just kind of an intro song that would go pretty quickly. And yeah, so I wrote it for them, and I was able to teach it to them for a contest, and they did a great job with it. But so after they did it, then I was able to go back and edit and say, this doesn't work.
Yeah.
This does. And so that was really a great learning process. I enjoyed that so much. And I think that as a composer, you have to, again, as we were talking earlier, you have to be free enough and humble enough to say, you know what, this didn't work. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean I'm a bad composer. I'm not any good. But this needs to be tweaked a little bit. And so I did that with that piece after Eagle Choral performed it.
You said you were going to tell like kind of the story behind that. Was that kind of all?
So my good friend Wendy Weeks, so I sent her the piece, and she's kind of like my editor, my proofreader.
I bet, yeah.
I send things to her and get her opinion, and she looks at it and makes sure my grammar and everything is correct. But I'd sent the piece to her after I wrote it, and she said, looks like you've used the Mixolydian scale. And I hadn't noticed it. I mean, and composers we don't think about that kind of thing when we're writing.
Oh,
we
yeah.
don't sit down and think,
No.
okay, I'm going to write in the Mixolydian scale today. We don't think
Most
that
of
way.
us don't.
Most of us don't.
Except for
really
the weird ones.
do.
Yeah.
right.
We always said at the same
Really
time.
weird ones do.
You weird
But,
ones.
So I was like, by George, you're right. And so I thought, again, thinking about my experience from Walton, I thought, okay, there's a ton of Glorias in the market.
Yeah.
Since this is based on the Mixolydian scale, why don't I just call it Mixolydian Gloria?
It's really clever.
Might as well. Why not?
And I hope that it will kind of distinguish it from all the other Glorias.
Yeah.
And it'll give the teachers a chance to talk
Yeah.
about
Yes, it's
not
a
just
really
the
good
major
teaching
scale.
moment.
It's
Yeah.
a great teaching moment to talk about, hey, here's the Mixolydian scale. I play whatever the scale may be, major scale. And look at how different the Mixolydian scale sounds from the major scale.
Yeah.
And so talk about that, that flat 7. So I think it will be a great conversation piece and a great teaching opportunity. And it's also in a compound meter 6/8.
There you go.
So you can talk about compound versus simple and those kinds of things. So there are a lot of teaching elements.
Yeah.
And I bought you guys one, by the way. I bought some pieces for you just to
Oh,
have.
sweet. Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
So, but I'm very proud of that little piece, and
That's great.
I'm just happy that she was able to see the merit in that piece.
Yeah.
So
that's
very
awesome.
pleased with it.
That's just a great example of how you can. I mean, you can as a composer, you have so much opportunity to serve
Absolutely.
the students and the teachers.
Absolutely.
And I mean, that's also a healthy way to think of it as a business as well.
Yeah.
You know, that's how businesses make money.
Yeah, no,
right.
Absolutely. You know, and I mean, I haven't made a ton of money from it. I mean, I think that it's kind of the icing on the cake.
Yeah.
But I think I'm more so concerned about, you know, am I achieving my artistic and creative goals by writing? You know, am I doing a good job with the crafting and really putting these pieces together? So that's really what drives me, is the artistic side of it, not money. I very rarely ever think about the money.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. I don't think most people on the music side are able to.
Yeah, we've just kind of resigned ourselves that we may not make as much as some others.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing. It was like either a pencil or like something that Wendy had on her desk saying like, I became a teacher for like the fame and money or something like that.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
I always tell people that we don't want full wallets, but we do want full hearts.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Full wallets would be nice, though.
Yeah, it would be nice.
We have families and we have bills and mortgages. And
Amen.
kind of thing,
Amen to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Now, Reese.
I had a question.
Sure.
So do you have like a teaching / composing philosophy, and do you see like, do those kind of like intertwine, or are they very similar?
Wow, that's a great question. I think so. My personal teaching philosophy is that all kids can learn. I don't care who it is. I don't care what your background is. I have an expectation that when you come into my classroom that you can learn. And I think with composition, I have to have the same kind of philosophy, is that all people can sing. Now there are different degrees of singing and different skill levels, but I have to believe that person who is in my choir, they can sing. And so I try to think in my writing, I want to write pieces that are singable. You know, I'm not trying to be the next, Orff, or give me some more just really obscure composers. I'm thinking the more instrumental route.
Oh, I don't know.
Ooh.
But I'm really not trying to be anything other than who I am. And so I want to make sure that my pieces are accessible. And so I write pieces that I feel just about anybody can sing. So my philosophy is, you can do it. It might take you a little bit of time. Might take quite a few rehearsals, but I believe that given what I've kind of built into the piece and my teaching, that you can do it. And I try to remember that as I write.
That's great.
Yeah.
So I did want to ask, kind of going back to like the publishing process.
Yeah.
You did tell us about, you go through the publisher, but then you also have your own self-publishing, business.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about that, and then kind of, how is that process different from sending it to a publisher, and what makes you decide to self-publish a piece versus trying to send it to a publisher?
Wow. So I have a publishing company called Summit Point Music Publishing, and I've had it for several years. I publish a lot of my music, mostly music that I feel maybe doesn't have commercial appeal, and what I mean by that is that it's it's not necessarily just a showy piece that publishing companies will want and can market. Some pieces are not accepted for publication with the major publishers because they just don't know how to market it. They don't know what category to put it in.
Yeah.
And so there are some pieces that I write that you can't just put it into a category.
Yeah.
And so those pieces I usually self-publish.
Gotcha. Oh.
And I've gotten lots of traction on MyScore. I know you also publish on MyScore, and it's just a great platform. It's just been a great blessing to me, and to be able to refer people to that.
Yeah,
that site.
For sure.
It's been fun.
Yeah. If you're listening to this and you're a young composer and maybe you're still unsure about dipping your toe into the big publishing or self-publishing, J.W. Pepper's MyScore and Hall Leonard's Arrange Me are great places to start.
Yeah. Haven't ventured to arrangement yet, but I've been reading up on it.
And it's pretty much the same as my score. So I was actually just trying to update some of my scores that are on there today because they've been sitting there for a while, and I was like, oh wow, I made some changes, and I never updated them.
I would say the major difference between those two is that with my score and with some of those self-publishing ventures, you retain 100% of the copyright.
Yep.
As I've, published with Walton and now with Briley, I only get 10% of the work. Now, I'm not going to balk at that like most composers do because they are printing, they are advertising, they are distributing, they're doing all the heavy lifting. Now, it'd be nice if it were just a little bit higher, but they're doing most of the work. So, so a standard publishing company or a contract is 10% of whatever they sell. Now, there's some other numbers that are involved with that, like overseas sales, and if it's published in a collection and that kind of thing, you get a little bit more. But with my score, you retain 100% of the copyright, so you're still the owner. J.W. Pepper at that point is just the distributor of the work. And you get more of the profit. So with, I think it's with my score, if they give you the option to have an e-copy or an actual printed copy, with a printed copy, I think it's 25% profit. And then with the, if you get an e-print, if you sell one of those, it's 50%. So that's infinitely better than the 10% that you get with just a traditional publishing house. But again, just the notoriety that I've been able to get from being with Walton, I think almost makes up for that 90%.
Definitely.
And I'm hoping that some commissions and things come from being seen on their website.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
And so then when you self-publish a piece, I mean, what makes a piece published? Is that just putting it up on the website? Or is that it?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're saying here it is available for public consumption. Would you like to buy it?
Yeah, it's on sale.
Yeah, it's on sale, and here you go. So, and that's my philosophy. I don't know if that's the right answer, but I think it's, when you make it available to the public, it is officially published.
Yeah.
And it's available.
And I think the reason I asked that is because it took me a long time as a young composer in past years to realize, like, I heard about self-publishing, and it's so easy to get down rabbit trails of, well, you have to go do this, and this, and your copyright secured, and your blah, blah, blah. And a lot of that is important.
Sure.
But ultimately, a piece being self-published it is available for people to buy.
Yeah, right.
And that's it.
Right. I was always against self-publishing, but I love it now. But that was because I was mostly being driven by, I have to get with a big publishing house. I've got to, and so that really takes all of the joy out of it to only desire to be published by big publishing houses.
You're putting yourself in your own box.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. So I love having the option of both. It's kind of cool to have, pieces that are in print with a publishing house, and then there are pieces that I still maintain the control over, and I like having that option.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think another big thing that really contributes to getting your name out there as well, and I've heard a lot of other people talk about, and something that I'm trying to kind of focus on doing more going forward is, it's really, and obviously this isn't a requirement or anything, but a lot of times it's helpful to focus on a more, specific kind of niche.
Yeah, definitely.
As far as, and obviously you're doing choral music and stuff like that, and recently, like, and I think it's important, like, throughout your early years as a composer, you're finding your voice. It's really important to just experiment with any voices, instruments, styles, whatever you want, and you should keep doing that for as long as you want. But
absolutely,
it is always something to consider as far as trying to focusing on a specific group or a specific demographic of teachers or ensembles, and that can kind of help sharpen your focus a little bit and maybe kind of get your foot in the door a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think what helps with that is just listening to all kinds of choirs. I don't mind being called a choral composer.
Yeah.
I know some composers say, well, don't limit yourself, and you should really just kind of keep your options open and your horizons. No. I'm a choral composer. That's what I enjoy. I'm a choral director. I'm a teacher. And I love choral music.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, now, if anybody wants to commission me to write a symphony or something, I could do it.
For sure, exactly.
But my first love is choral music, and that's what I spend my time listening to and doing. So I think any composer, yes, you've got to be sure about what your identity is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And as a teacher, you know, you've got to be clear about, okay, what kind of teacher am I going to be? Am I going to be this kind of teacher because I saw somebody else do it?
Mm-hmm.
Or am I going to be uniquely who I was created to be and try to be as effective as I can in that way?
Yeah.
And that is really how you find your voice. You're true to who you are. You are who you are, no more and no less than
Authentic.
that. Yeah, absolutely.
I kind of segues into what we were just talking about. But like, who are some of like your inspirations as far as like composers and teachers?
Yeah. Gosh. So Moses Hogan was a tremendous influence.
Oh, he's awesome.
When I first encountered his music, and the fact that he was African American, that just blew me away. That somebody that had the same skin color as me was doing so well and could publish these amazing pieces.
Yeah.
Tremendous influence. And then there are some sacred composers like Joseph M. Martin and Pepper Choplin and, you know, people who are writing sacred music. I really was into that. And then, of course, your Eric Whitakers and Dan Gothrop. I really like his music. And then some of the newer composers, Jocelyn Hagan and Tim Takash and Marcus Garrett, another African-American composer, and Jarrell Gray, who was an up-and-coming. You know, I'm just inspired by their work and by what they're able to do. And Emily Crocker, and gosh, I'll get in trouble if I start calling names, but these people had a really, really great effect on me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so. And teachers, gosh, there's been so many teachers. I mean, the lady that I get to work with every day
She's pretty great.
She's awesome. I tell people I'm in the Wendy Weeks School of Choral Music Education because she's a master teacher. And so I've been so privileged to be able to work with her, but to see her in action and learn so many things from her. It's just been one of the greatest educations of my life to be able to see her in action. And we have phenomenal choir directors in our district. Karen Nizer just retired, just phenomenal. And then we've got a lot of younger choir directors. You know, Maddie Jones just was here and was fabulous. And, you know, I love Dr. Jeff Goolsby, and I just admire him so much and have learned so much from watching him. Again, I don't want to get in trouble calling names. Lloyd Hawthorne and Clell Wright. I mean, the list
too many.
Just goes on.
Yeah.
I have been so fortunate. Mike Scarborough, Paul Pearsall. I've been so fortunate to be in Abilene and to be able to learn from the best as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
They've been just awesome.
It's such a great place to be for music. And
It really is. I never, we have never really, you'd never think that Abilene is such like
you wouldn't.
But I mean, we have the Abilene Philharmonic, we have
absolutely.
Chorus Abilene, we have, and then just
Chamber
the
singers.
AISD Fine Arts is just.
And you know that those people are here because they want to.
Yeah.
They want to be here. I mean, they could go anywhere else, but the fact that they're here in Abilene and committed, I mean, it says a lot about the kinds of people that they are, their characters. So, love you guys so much. You've been played such an important part of my life.
And we're trying to get as many of them onto this podcast as
Let's
possible.
do it. Put them on. Put them on.
We are having Windy Weeks on next week.
Great.
So,
Yes.
little
Great.
teaser. Stay tuned,
Yeah, that's
everybody.
awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, can't wait to hear that one. Yeah.
Okay, here's a question I was going to ask. So this is still in terms of, you know, your composing, but I think it could go for anything that teachers have or just people. But like, I want to know, as a teacher, you know, you are so busy. How do you find the time to compose? Well, to compose music in general, but I was going to say to compose such great music, right?
Thank you.
I mean,
you
you've
for
been
saying
able to put in the time and do that. And I mean, I know you have summers off as a teacher, but that by no means you're not busy. We were just all talking about this before. We've all been super busy this summer.
Yeah. I've written very little music this summer because this has been just a very busy summer. But, you know, weekends are are really huge for me. I can write on the weekends. I very rarely write through the week because Karen knows this as a teacher. You've got so many things that
Yeah.
you've got to do, and you've got lesson plans, and you've just got so many things that, you know, I almost feel guilty sometimes when I sit down to compose and I'm like, well, I've got lesson plan to do. I've got
Yeah.
this or I've got that. So most of my composing happens over the weekend or long holidays or breaks.
Yeah.
Spring break is usually a good time for me. But yeah, just, or whenever I can, you know,
Sure.
it's few and far between. I'll say that.
Yeah, that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This has been awesome, guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, of
Yeah.
course.
This
Well,
has been great.
yeah. Well, before we wrap it up, I mean, obviously you've already, told us a lot about, your music and everything. But for anyone, if there's anyone listening, any choir directors listening that want to check out your music, what's the best place for them to go and just kind of take a look at everything or get in contact with you?
Yeah, so I am currently working on a website.
All right. Good.
And so hopefully that will be done sometime soon. But I would say if they wanted to get in contact with me, you can go to JW Pepper, my score. I have a profile there. And so I think it's JW Pepper. If you go to JW Pepper and you put in my name, all my music will come up. And if you want to email me, I don't know, maybe you guys can put the email
Yeah,
on
we can do that.
Oh,
on
yeah,
the deal.
for sure.
But I would love to talk with everyone. I could talk about composition.
Yeah.
Just
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
sure you could too.
Oh,
Christian.
yeah. I'm sure we'll do that. We'll
That
have
is-
to do this again.
Yeah,
sometime.
I enjoy it so much. But yeah, go to JW Pepper, and most of my catalog is there.
Great.
You can check it
Yeah,
out. And
when we'll link your profile there.
pretty
in the
easy to
description.
find on the EISD website as well.
Okay,
And,
cool. And then once you do get that website up, send it to us, and we'll go back and add it to the description. So it may be there by
Yeah.
the time you're listening to this.
And I will give my email address. It's summitmusicpublishing@yahoo.com.
Okay.
And I check that every day. And so if anybody has any correspondence or questions, I would be more than happy to answer those. So
Okay. And you do accept commissions and
I
stuff like
accept
that?
commissions, and just would love to talk with anybody who has any questions about my work or about composition. Be glad to talk to you.
Cool. Well, I think I can speak on behalf of the whole music community of Abilene that we're all so proud of, all the successes you've had with your music, and
Thank you.
we're so blessed to have you in our community.
Well, thank you very much for saying that, guys. I appreciate it, and just looking forward to seeing your music out there, Christian.
Oh,
one
thank
day.
you.
It's gonna come, man.
Thanks. I appreciate
It's
it.
definitely gonna come.
Hey,
Yeah,
thank you very much.
you're welcome. You're welcome.
Cool.